Hey church, welcome and thank you for worshiping with us. Wherever you're worshiping, in your home or on your TV, laptop or phone, you are a part of this family. And you could watch or listen to past messages by heading to mycornerstone.family. On our sermons page, you can view playlists, search for past messages, and more. You can even listen to our content by subscribing to the Cornerstone America's podcast, which can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. I hope you enjoy the message and thank you for being a part of the Cornerstone family.
All right, so about 3 weeks ago, we were in 2 Timothy. We're in part 3. We talked about don't quit. We felt like this first part of chapter 2, verses 1 through 13, Paul was really saying, don't quit, Timothy. Remember, Paul is in jail. He's really just awaiting execution. And Timothy's trying to pastor this church in Ephesus that could be described as, maybe a dumpster fire. That's maybe one way to describe it. Encountering all kinds of problems. And Paul is saying, Timothy, don't quit. God's not done. He's still working. He's still moving. And so today we're going to continue in that. We're jumping into the last part of 2 Timothy chapter 2. We're looking at verses 14 through 26. So let me start with this. Have you ever noticed that we have started treating arguments like a sport? And I know, I do this too. We watch debate clips online, right? And we just want to see somebody get destroyed. We want to see some zingers, get thrown back and forth. And we scroll through the comments, not really to learn anything, but just see a couple strangers going at it, don't we? And some hilarious comments, right? You just scroll through there and you're just laughing at the comments going back and forth. And there's a term for this that we use. It's recreational arguing. That's what we term it nowadays, recreational arguing. That literally people just going online for the sake of just arguing, recreational arguing, disagreeing just for the thrill of it, just for the win, for the feeling of being right and letting an audience see it. Recreational arguing. Now, if we're honest, most of us don't do this, but sometimes, we don't do it online maybe, but maybe we do it in a small chat room or group, or maybe at the dinner table when somebody brings up politics on purpose, and maybe there's a meeting at work and we've stopped really listening and we've just started waiting for our turn to respond, just, looking for this recreational arguing moment. I mean, we've all felt that pull. That moment where the goal quietly shifts from understanding the other person to defeating the other person, right? We've all had that pull in our flesh. And here's the strange thing is we can walk away from these moments and win the argument and lose something much greater than that. And that becomes part of the problem. And this is exactly the danger that the Apostle Paul is talking about here. He's talking to Timothy about running away from that feeling of just wanting to win the argument, just wanting to get some zingers in and one up the other person. Think about Timothy is a young pastor, not young maybe in our terms of age. He was probably in his 30s or 40s, but young for a pastor back then in their culture. So he was young. He was facing real disagreements. He was facing some real bad teaching in the church, real people pulling in bad directions. And Paul is giving him some instructions on really something you wouldn't expect. He doesn't tell Timothy, go for the win the argument. That's how you're going to take care of this problem in the church. No, he says something very opposite here, and we're going to see this as we jump through here. And here's the thing that we got to think about is when we're in a disagreement, what are we actually trying to do? I think sometimes we can lose sight of what are we trying to do. We're in the heat of an argument. What are we trying to do? Because Paul is about to tell Timothy that actually that word fights, nobody wins. When we get into a word fight, I feel like Paul coined this phrase, word fight, nobody wins. The title of my message is Nobody Wins a Word Fight. And so many times what our arguments get reduced to is not trying to fix the problem, but fix the blame. And then we end up in just to a word fight. Let's read our text this morning and then we'll jump into it and pull it apart. Look at verse 14. It says, keep reminding God's people of these things. Warn them before God against quarreling about words. He says, warn them before God against quarreling about words. It is of no value and only ruins those who listen. Not just those who are quarreling, but even those who listen. Verse 15. Do your best to present yourself to God as one approved, a worker who does not need to be ashamed and who correctly handles the word of truth. avoid godless chatter, because those who indulge in it will become more and more ungodly. Their teaching will spread like gangrene. Among them are Hymenaeus and Philetus, who have departed from the truth. They say that the resurrection has already taken place, and they destroy the faith of some. Nevertheless, God's solid foundation stands firm, sealed with this inscription: the Lord knows those who are his, and everyone who confesses the name of the Lord must turn away from wickedness. In a large house, there are articles not only of gold and silver, but also of wood and clay. Some are for special purposes, and some are for common use. Those who cleanse themselves from the latter will be instruments for special purposes, made holy, useful to the master, prepared to do any good work. Flee the evil desires of youth and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace, along with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. Don't have anything to do with foolish and stupid arguments, because you know they produce quarrels. And the Lord's servant must not be quarrelsome, but must be kind to everyone, able to teach, not resentful. Opponents must be gently instructed in the hope that God will grant them repentance, leading them to a knowledge of the truth, and that they will come to their senses and escape the trap of the devil, who has taken them captive to do his will. Wow, what a loaded text for this morning. Well, let's jump into this. First, he lays out, I think, the temptation here, and this is it. He says, keep reminding God's people of these things. Warn them before God against quarreling about words. It is of no value. When we just get into a word fight, it's of no value and only ruins those who listen. Now, here's what's interesting. 3 words in the English, 1 word in the Greek. It's possible that It's possible that Paul made up this word. He put 2 words together. He put the word fight, or word and arguing together, word and fight together into 1 word. So it's word fights. It's literally word fights, or quarreling about words. It's not written. We don't find it in any Greek manuscripts written before Paul wrote this. So after he wrote this, then we see it written in other places. So either it was something that was verbally said but not written down, and Paul puts it in writing, one of the first to put it in writing, and then it takes some it goes viral, right? We say it went viral, right? Something like that. But Paul maybe he made it up too. We don't know, but he comes up with this word fights. It's fighting just about words. It's a specific kind of fight. He's not talking about careful conversations about theology or hard conversations that we need to have. He's talking about fighting about words. He's talking about a specific kind of fighting. It's about terminology. It's about scoring points. It's about wanting to just win the exchange. It forgets the gospel that's even in the room. It's just worried about words and the fight that is before them. And Paul says it's not just unhelpful. He says not only is it of no value, but it ruins those who listen. He goes on in verse 16. He says, avoid godless chatter. He's saying the same thing here. Avoid godless chatter, or these word fights, because those who indulge in it will become more and more ungodly. He said it ruins those who listen, and it takes you down a path. He says, avoid godless chatter, because those who indulge in it, those who participate in it, become more and more ungodly. There is a progress to this. There is a progression. It doesn't go in a positive way. It goes in a negative way, and they become more and more godless. He said, and this is avoid. This is constant. I wish, again, so many times I wish things were a one-time thing and done, a one-time decision to follow Jesus, a one-time. This is avoid. It's something you can do repeatedly, right? It's avoid. It's keep avoiding, keep steering clear, because there is a lot of godless chatter in our world that we can indulge in. And Paul says, stay clear of it. Don't get involved in it. Man, it ruins the listener. And you become more and more ungodly the more you indulge in it. It becomes very important. And Paul's talking about this process. Verse 17, he says, their teaching will spread like gangrene. Among them are Hymenaeus and Philetus. So he says their teaching, he's talking about their teaching, he's getting more specific, will spread like gangrene. We know what gangrene is, the body. It doesn't stay in one place, but takes over and just eats away and spreads through the body. Eventually brings death. Jesus and Paul talked about the Christians, about the church being the body of Christ. And just like gangrene is to a physical body, so this kind of godless chatter or these word fights are like gangrene to his spiritual body. He says their teaching will spread like gangrene. And he names two people. Among them are Hymenaeus and Philetus. Hymenaeus is mentioned in 1 Timothy, so he's not new. This is the only place Philetus is mentioned. But obviously, among them, he lists two, like, hey, Timothy, these are the two that I'm talking about. As the church would read this, they would know exactly who Paul is talking about and the situation that they were involved in. In verse 18, he says, who have departed from the truth. These two had departed from the truth, and they were saying, we get a glimpse of what they had been teaching. We don't get the full story, but they say that the resurrection had already taken place, and they destroy the faith of some. So they're not talking about the resurrection of Jesus. We know that had already taken place, but somehow they were teaching that the resurrection of believers had already taken place, and it was destroying the faith of some. It wasn't just leading people astray. It was destroying their faith. We even see today in some areas where doctrines just get pushed to a limit or taken too far or taken out of context, destroy people's faith. One of the easiest ones when we talk about this end times theology, people get so wrapped up in an end times theology and start, suggesting dates, setting dates. And I know I've done messages on this before where we've talked about this, that people have set dates and a whole group of people will follow them. If you're as old as I am, you remember a famous book, sold millions of copies, 88 Reasons Why Jesus is Coming Back in 1988. Is anybody old enough to remember that? Yeah, we've got some that remember that book, right? 88 Reasons Why Jesus is Coming Back in 1988. And when he didn't come back in 1988, he wrote another book, 89 Reasons Why Jesus is Coming Back in 1989. And what we have is groups of people, like I said, the first book sold millions of copies. The second one, not as many as you can imagine, right? But you have people throughout history that have set dates and really got people to believe them and follow them. And you read some of the testimonies afterwards when it didn't happen. Like, and I've done this, I read this in some of my past messages, and it's just like, man, people are like, I don't know what to do. My faith has been shattered. I don't know where we go from here. Because they had taken something and pushed it so far to a limit where God never intended us to put it. And it destroyed their faith. And I imagine this is something similar that was happening here, that they had departed from the truth. There was probably an element of truth there. They took it way too far, and they say that the resurrection has already taken place, and they destroy the faith of some. Now, this is what Timothy is dealing with back in Ephesus. This is part of the problem that he's dealing with. How would you like to be there having to deal with this? Trying to clean up this mess. This is what he's dealing with. And Paul's laying it out. Timothy, this is how you do it. So here's the temptation is in the middle of this. The temptation is for Timothy to enter into the fight, to enter into the word fight. And Paul says there's a better way to do this. He goes, let me explain it to you. This is what he goes into. And the first place Paul starts is with handling the truth carefully. Doesn't that make sense? When they've taken the truth and they've perverted it and made it false, they've distorted it. Paul starts with handle the truth carefully. He says in verse 15, do your best to present yourself to God as one approved, a worker who does not need to be ashamed, who correctly handles the word of truth. You've got to correctly handle the word of truth. They were not correctly handling the word of truth, and it was showing, and this is what he says. Now, it becomes very important to handle things correctly. Go to my next slide. Not to put my in-laws on the spot, but my mother-in-law was cooking beans for our 4th of July party on Wednesday night. If you noticed, we did not have any beans that night. She had it in a tinfoil pan, which is a little flimsy, and when she was pulling it out of the oven, tinfoil pans do what they do best is they flex and they give, and all the beans came out. The good news is not all of them were wasted. Some of them were still out. Never mind. But obviously this left a terrible mess. And so if we don't handle things correctly, we end up with a mess. And what they had done back at Ephesus, they were not handling things correctly, and they ended up with a mess. So I think what my mother-in-law has decided to do, she's here in the back, right? So I got to be careful here. She comes, hey guys, if she comes running after me, protect me. Protect me. Okay. She's going to put a pan underneath there just to stabilize it so she can handle it better and doesn't spill. So we got to be careful how we handle things. All right, going back to the verse 15, it says, do your best to present yourself to God, as one approved, a worker who does not need to be ashamed and who correctly handles the word of truth. Now, he's not talking like a surgeon slicing very delicately, cutting things apart. He's more talking like a road builder who is building a straight road, a direct path through rough ground. You know, some of our roads weave and back and forth, up and down, because sometimes it's easier to drive around the mountain than straight through. But what Paul's talking about here, when it comes to the truth, a straight path works the best. Handling it correctly, know where we're going, directed on that, even through rough terrain, cutting through that and having a straight path. Handling the truth carefully. That's where it starts. Are we handling the truth carefully? How do we handle it? Do we handle it carefully? Do we push things to the limit to try and make our point? Do we want just a crooked path because it's a little bit easier? We can make our point better. And how do we handle the truth? A straight path takes effort. A straight path takes attention. It takes being careful. Are we working a straight path when it comes to the truth? And that's the picture that Paul is giving to Timothy. A worker cutting a straight path to the truth so that anyone who walks it actually arrives at the truth. That's what Paul was looking for. That's what Paul did. And that's what Paul's telling Timothy to do. How do we handle the truth? He's not telling Timothy to avoid hard truths. He's not telling him to avoid difficult conversations. No, he's saying we have to have those. But are we handling God's word carefully? Are we handling it accurately? Because we like, in our day and age, we like to take it and we'll put a little twist on it to give it a little bit more zing, a little bit more power, let me just push this one over so I win the argument. He goes on in verse 20 to make his point. In a large house there are articles not only of gold and silver, but also of wood and clay. Some are for special purposes, some are for common use. So he shifts the picture again and he goes into vessels in a large house. In their day and age, a large house, a person had money. Of course, they had special vessels that were gold and silver, other ones that were more common. As you see, I've got some plates and cups up here. We've got this wonderful fine china, boat, gravy boat, wonderful family piece right there. We have plastic. We have plastic in our homes, right? Containers for putting things together and lids that don't fit together. Does anybody have a cabinet full of these type of containers with a lid and the actual container that don't go together? How do we end up? Somehow, it's like socks that don't match, right? I think that's why my kids wear socks that don't match. You just wear them. I can't do that. They have to match. Who's matching socks in here? They have to match, right? Yeah, and others that say, no, just put two together, they're good. Yeah, right, yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. My kids do that too. All right, so we have these type of containers. And we have, as he says here, a large house, articles, not only of gold and silver, but also of wood and clay. We have paper plates. Anybody use paper plates at home? We love paper plates, right? Because you're done eating on them. You're not washing dishes. You're throwing these things away, right? And that's the thing. Like a plate like this, you don't wash. You don't stick this in the dishwasher. You don't rinse it off and say, I'm going to use that later. Do you? Right, no. Okay, I'm just checking. Nobody does that, all right? I've reused a couple, but I was desperate, okay? That doesn't count. Doesn't count. But we have paper. But we also have fine china, things that are for special purposes. We pull this out at our house for Thanksgiving, right? For a Christmas dinner, for special occasions. That's the only time we use this. And we're done using it, we wash it. A lot of times we hand wash them. We put them right back in the china cabinet because that's where they belong, special purposes. This is what he's bringing out in this text. He says there's large house, there's articles in there, gold and silver, also wood and clay, some for special purposes, others for common use. We have both. He's going to tell us which one you want to be. Now, here's the thing about paper plates, we throw these away. Stacy and I, actually, we didn't buy our fine china. This was my mom and dad's. They gave it to us. Fine china is something that's valuable. It's useful. We pass it on from generation to generation. It's different than a paper plate we just throw away. But here's the thing about the fine china, about the vessel that we are. It's not set in stone. God gives us the choice of what kind of vessel we'll be. He brings the point home in verse 21. He says, those who cleanse themselves from the latter will be instruments for special purposes. Anybody can be an instrument for special purposes. Made holy, useful to the master, prepared to do any good work. If you want to be a paper plate, you can be. But what Paul is saying, if you want to be fine china that God can use for any purpose, we can be. Now, obviously, this process didn't start with us. It started with God's work in us. But he does give us the choice. How are we going to live our life? How are we going to handle the truth? Are we going to handle it in a way that we're just, ready to be used as a paper plate, or that tin that's, going to spill over? Or are we going to be like the fine china? That's our choice. What are we going to do? Those who cleanse themselves from the latter, those who cleanse themselves from these word fights, from this emptiness, this godless chatter. He says, those who cleanse themselves from the latter will be instruments for special purposes. I think that ought to be our goal, being cleansed from these latter things so that we can be available for special purposes, made holy, useful to the master. We want to be useful to the master. He says, prepared to do any good work. And he leaves it up to us. What will we do? It's about refusing to let our mind, our mouth, and our convictions get fouled up by careless handling of what's true. Whether it's gossip dressed up as concern, whether it's half-truths dressed up as passion, or it's exaggeration dressed up as conviction. This is what Paul's laying out for Timothy. Before we ever open our mouth in disagreement, how are we handling the truth? Before you ever open your mouth in a disagreement, how are we handling the truth? All right, let's go into my second point. Handle people gently. Verse 22, this is what Paul is telling Timothy. He says, notice here, flee the evil desires of youth and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace, along with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. Now, he doesn't say manage, he doesn't say moderate, he says flee. And what's interesting about this verse, almost anytime you see this, I don't want to push it. Almost anytime you see this verse, it's being used in relation to sexual immorality. I think it includes that. But in the context, that's not the primary purpose of this. He's talking about fleeing word arguments, word fights. He's talking about fleeing this godless chatter, fleeing the evil desires of youth. Timothy was still considered like a young man, but you know what a young person typically does? They're quick to get mad, quick to get into a fight, quick to argue, right? We've all been there. Well, some of you may still be there. Some of us were there, right? We're older, so right. But anyways, flee. He says, flee that, run from that. Run like you're running out of a burning house, is what he's saying. Flee the evil. You put on your Nike Airs and you run as fast as you can. For some of us, it's not that fast anymore, but we still try to run. He says, flee the evil desires of youth and pursue. You run away from something. You're running away from these word fights, but you're running to something. You're pursuing righteousness. You're pursuing faith. You're pursuing love. You're pursuing peace. And these are all things you don't do alone. In America, we try to do these alone, but the way God intended it, he says, along with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. You do it along with other people that are all pursuing the same thing. We don't pursue them alone. We pursue them with other people. It's easier to run with others than run by yourself. You guys believe that, right? We all know that, right? Along with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. Are we fleeing those evil desires? How are we handling? So this is how he starts. So how are you getting to this, Pastor? How are you getting to this? He's talking about handle people gently. Well, when we're not fleeing those things, we will not handle them gently. But if we keep reading in here, we'll see what he's talking about here. Verse 23, he says, don't have anything to do with foolish and stupid arguments because you know they produce quarrels. It's just going to cause more fighting. Verse 24, and the Lord's servant must not be quarrelsome, but must be kind to everyone, able to teach, not resentful. He's talking about handling people gently. He goes, man, there's a dumpster fire. Paul's like, Timothy, I know there's a dumpster fire going on over there in Ephesus. There's some really bad teaching and stuff. There's a lot of word fights that are going on. Don't get involved in that here. Here's what you do. Handle the word of truth carefully. It says handle people gently. And the Lord's servant must not be quarrelsome. And we don't start fights. We're not trying to continue arguments, trying to put them out, but must be kind to everyone. Able to teach, not resentful. That's how we handle people gently. It doesn't say be quick, win the argument, be sharp with your answers. It says be kind to everyone. Able to teach. Able to teach. You might have to teach them once. You might have to teach them a second time. You might have to teach them a third time. How many times did we have to teach something to our kids? Anyways, it takes time. It takes time to get it into them. Able to teach, being patient, not resentful. This is what he's saying to them. So handle truth carefully. Handle people gently. And this is where he goes in the last part. My last point is leave the outcome to God, because we can't change anybody. So he says, Timothy, handle the word carefully. Treat people gently, but in the end, it's not you to win them or lose them. It's not you that can change them. It's only God. And he says in verse 19, nevertheless, God's solid foundation stands firm. I love this. Nevertheless, God's solid foundation stands firm. It's standing firm. It is whatever damage Hymenaeus and Philetus did to Paul, did to Timothy, did to the church at Ephesus, it did not touch the firm foundation of God. This is what Paul is saying. This gives Timothy hope. No matter what damage has been done, God's solid foundation stands firm through it all. Whatever damage has been done to your life by somebody else, guess what? God's solid foundation stands firm. And then he goes into an inscription here. He says, it's sealed. He said, sealed with this inscription. The Lord knows those who are his, and everyone who confesses the name of the Lord must turn away from wickedness. The first one, everyone who confesses, first one, the Lord knows those who are his. The Lord knows what's going on. He knows. He knows. He's got control of everything. Don't worry about Timothy. It's not up to you, Timothy, to win the argument. It's not up to you, Timothy, to win the person. It's your job to handle the truth correctly. It's your job to be gentle. And it's your job to leave the outcome to God. Do you notice that it's a lot easier to be patient with somebody when you're not trying to control the outcome? We have troubles being patient with somebody when we're trying to control the outcome. So we can be patient. It's God's job to handle the outcome. Let's focus on what we should be focused on. The Lord knows those who are his. Man, God has this thing under control. Nobody is pulling one over on God. But he doesn't leave it at that. He says, everyone who confesses the name of the Lord must turn away from wickedness. Meaning, there is our part. For us, in all of us, there is God's part and there's our part in him changing us. Let's not leave anything out that we have a part to play. Everyone who confesses the name of the Lord must turn away from wickedness. Are we doing our part? Two inscriptions. One talking about God's part. The second part talking about our part. And I think Timothy in this found a lot of hope because he could leave the outcome to God. I think too here he's getting to the point. This isn't about winning. This isn't about a defeated opponent. This is really about rescuing somebody. There were people that needed rescued. And you see when he gets to the end of this, go to my next verse. He says, opponents must be gently instructed in the hope that God will grant them repentance. Timothy, the outcome, again, not up to you, it's up to God, will grant them repentance, leading them to a knowledge of the truth. That's why it's so important that we handle the truth correctly and that we do it gently. Go to my next verse. He says, and that they will come to their senses. Paul lets us in on something. They come to their senses. Now we know what's wrong with this world, right? A lot of times we say, where's the common sense? Yeah. That they would come to their senses and escape from the trap of the devil. He says, here's the problem. What's going on with these two other guys and this false teaching that's going through the church? Man, they've lost their senses, and they need to escape from the trap of the devil, who has taken them captive to do his will. That's the root of the problem right there. That's what's going on. Faithfulness. And Paul's really just saying, Timothy, be faithful. Handle the truth. Handle the truth. How are you handling the truth? How are you handling the person in front of you? And then who do you trust everything to? Are you trusting the outcome to God? Will you stand with me this morning as we get ready to close in prayer? Go to my last screen. I want you to think about these 3 points. How are you doing in your toughest relationships and the places you're finding conflict in your life? How are you doing at handling the truth? Are you handling it carefully? Are you using it like a billy club just to beat somebody up with? How do you handle the people? Are you gentle with them? Or are you being rough? Are you being gruff with them? Are you being short? And then are you trusting God? Are you leaving the outcome to him?